Hello, Tanya Gould. How are you doing?
I am fantabulous.
Fantabulous. That's great. Today is the 19th of October. We've got about a little less than 2 weeks before formal voting day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm Matt Daniel, and I'm with the Spirit of VMI, and we are a political action committee that is founded. We're not part of VMI. We are totally separate from the Institute, but we're there to stand sentinel over the Institute and try to help candidates who are friendly toward our cause and toward VMI, and with the goal of trying to get government out of VMI as much as we can, let them kind of run themselves. You've probably seen that they've been a victim of some negative press over the summer, but we can get more into that later. Today, for anyone who's watching, I'm talking with Tanya Gould, who is running for the delegate position in House of Delegates District 21. So tell me about that district, Tanya. What is that?
So the district is District 21, and it backs up in Chesapeake against Buck Station Road. Kimsville, if you're going towards Virginia Beach, is the cutoff on that one side. So Kimsville, and you take that up and over, and it's past Elbow Road, but that area, and you drive that up into like Green Run, Salem area, Hillcrest areas, South Independence Road, Lynn Haven area. So it's a good piece of, and I like to call it the heart of Virginia Beach area.
Right. Okay.
When you're looking at Hampton Roads area.
Okay. I went to high school in Newport News, and so we'd go to Virginia Beach whenever we could, and sometimes sporting contests, games, etc., track meets, whatever, would take us down to Norfolk or Virginia Beach, Hampton, of course. So relatively familiar. There's been some development since I lived there, but I know where you're talking about. Just so those people who know, and Tanya, so you know too, we've done these interviews with a bunch of different candidates, and I'm just going to rattle off a few. Gina Ciarcia from the 2nd up in Northern Virginia, Nick Clementi in Loudoun County from the 10th, Jason Ballard out in Southwestern Virginia in the 12th, Tara Durant, the 28th up in the Fredericksburg area, JD Maddox in Alexandria, 45th, Mike Cherry, 66, south of Richmond, Otto Waxman, who is over from you a little west on the south side of Virginia, Mark Early around Richmond, Mary Margaret Castleberg around Richmond, Tim Anderson, one of your neighbors, great dude, who interviewed while he was, I think, at a boat party, and he's a funny guy. He's a very, very sharp guy. Glenn Davis also, I had a really good conversation with him, and then Matt Lang from the 36th, and we've had some other ones too, but those are the ones I just remembered to write down right here. And the point of these is so that we can get you on record about issues that are that relate to your district, and how, maybe things that your voters would want to know about. And we only got 2 weeks left, so it'd be nice to have a little media piece for us, for you, to see how you stand on some of the critical issues. So we'll get to that here in a minute or so. So you're running against a lady named Kelly Converse Fowler, is that right?
Yes.
And she's she's the incumbent. How many tours of duty has she had?
She served 2 terms, and so this is her third term she's running for.
Okay. So I'll just get straight to the questions. Public safety is a big deal. Has been a big deal with every candidate that I've spoken with, and so that I don't lead the witness here, tell me how that's going in your district. Tell me, how has there been a crime spike over the last year? Has the defund the police effort reared its head up in your neck of the woods, and what effect is that having? Or are there some other public safety issues that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so in my district specifically, folks are concerned, but not as concerned as they are about some other issues. However, when they, find out that I am a survivor of human trafficking, that's a very specific issue. Now, the 21st district is comprised of mostly residential, communities, so we don't have a lot of shopping centers, but we have a ton of residents. And so, as you can imagine, families are concerned um, about human trafficking issues here in the area. And then to learn that I am a mentor for kids who have been identified as being trafficked, and I work at our local children's hospital around those issues. And so kids who are at high risk as well. And
I know
so,
for a fact, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just, I know for a fact that you do that because we've tried to schedule a few of these interviews that we just couldn't make the timing work because you were working late or early or both at a counseling center for human trafficking. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't start off by asking you. Tell me a
Oh,
little bit
no.
about yourself.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's been a challenge trying to juggle both, um, because the need is great and the issues are real. And but it's beautiful, and I enjoy what I do. I really do. And so, but I'm also a consultant with the State Department, and I help work on um, like programming and outreach when it comes to human trafficking information. I also do a lot of training for law enforcement, sheriff's office. I work, well, I'm a member of the United States Advisory Council for Human Trafficking. And so I get to speak to the Interagency Task Force, which is comprised of about, I think it's 38 departments and agencies that work on anti-human trafficking issues. And so Department of Labor, Department of Justice, Department of Education, Department of Housing, and we don't just like look specifically at human trafficking, but also what are the components of human trafficking? Like what causes, what's the cause of human trafficking? Like why are traffickers doing this? And so we look at or vulnerabilities. So a lot of work is being done on vulnerable populations or underserved communities. And so that's why Department of Housing is involved, Department of Education. So we want to make sure that we're able to be more proactive versus reactive, to be able to, tackle this, in all areas and all aspects of, human trafficking. And so it's been an honor to serve in that way, especially being a survivor myself. And so my goal is to take what I've learned, and when it comes to like working across aisles on issues and real issues that are happening, in our country. But for me now, it's in our community or in the district. And then on the state level, do a better job when it comes to supporting victims of crime. And again, being more proactive and working on a preventative side when it comes to vulnerable communities, because I want to make sure that, a lot of what the vulnerabilities, come from, families who are broken in some way, right? Or just a lot of families or people not being able to get the services and resources that they need in order to move forward in life. So we want to make sure we're closing these gaps, because then it makes our communities less vulnerable and more confident to live their own lives and to dream and to do the things they want to do. And so, I look forward to working across the aisles, right, to actually make movement. And And so I'm gonna have fun with that. I already know it. I'm
Well,
excited about that piece.
that's fantastic. I was going to ask you one of the questions later on in the interview, and we've already gotten to it now, was the reaching across the aisle to try to, calm the divide that we have. And this sounds like a perfect issue to do that. This is traditionally, you don't hear this a lot from Republican candidates. It's refreshing to hear this. It sort of takes the teeth away from a candidate who would normally align with liberal ideologies. And I mean, so this just shows me that you don't have to be a leftist to be compassionate. And
Right. No, yeah, I think it's important to, and this is what I've learned in my experience. A lot of times we just bring our heads to the table, like we bring our ideas to the table. And then sometimes we just bring our passions to the table. But it's important for us to align them and bring them to the table, together, our heads, our thoughts, and our hearts. Because when we do it that way, then now here we're working together, right? We have the compassionate side and logical side, which should be the way it works anyway, which is kind of like we have the one side that, is slow moving and one that is fast moving, and okay, let's work together. We're not doing that anymore. um, so, being, for me, it is about bringing the issues, but, there's a conservatism that I appreciate being a part of and being aligned with, that I bring to the table as well. And so, yeah, I can, go on forever, but I just think it's important that we find ways to work together. For me as a representative, it's up to me to listen to community leaders, right? Because and a side note, I am a community leader, right? And before I was a community leader, I was a community member, and because of my situations and things that I found myself in, I naturally became a leader in it because I saw there were some untapped resources, there was this disconnect, and so I had to lead myself and my family through it, right? And that's how I became a community leader, because now I want to show others how to do it. So I know the hard work of community leaders, people like yourself who represent people, right? So you're the one who, um, you do the hard work as a community member. You go the extra mile as a community leader. And so I think as a delegate, there is no way that I can talk to every constituent, right? 80,000 people within the district. However, I can talk to my civic group leaders. I can talk to community leaders who are serving different problems and issues in the community, because that's what you're doing. You're doing
have you
the hard work.
identified those people? Have you identified the civic leaders and the
I
different sort of domains?
Yeah, so I have definitely spent time during my campaign looking for community leaders and sitting down and talking to them to find out what, their specific needs are, and, what they're representing. And so as a delegate, it's my job to make sure that they have the seat at the table, and that I'm listening to them and hearing them out, and then, moving forward in decision making. Right. So I look forward to doing that, because I value and understand the work of community leaders. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about that. It shouldn't be that I go to a civic league meeting and I'm seeing mostly senior citizens. That's not okay. PTAs are almost obsolete. Like, we need to, instead of incentivize them, or something has to be done to help people engage back into community.
Outside of maybe San Diego, I think the area, the Virginia Beach, the Tidewater and Peninsula area has the most veteran, the active duty military and veteran representation. It's kind of goes into the community action and
Yes.
taking care of the people in your constituency. Um, are there are there programs now, or do you have ideas uh, about the veteran population in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake area? Have you talked with those people? How are they receiving you? Just, what's the whole gig like with the veterans?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, my fiance is a veteran. He's a Navy vet,
Nice.
retired Navy vet. Yeah. And my experience, just, none of my family members are military. I have, been in the military. And so I've learned a lot about the military community just by being with him first. And, you know, spent time, well, we actually had an event for veterans at my office to get to know what their issues are. And, we ended up talking about um, how veterans, as they're retiring out of the military, they're looking to leave the state of Virginia because of their taxes and, not really being able to enjoy retirement here in our state. And that's a problem, you
Yeah.
know.
I know Glenn Youngkin talks about that, about sort of relieving the tax burden on the veteran. And
Yes,
that's, so is that something you support?
absolutely. I totally honor every, person who took up the call to, to serve our country. And, they should be honored in such a just a beautiful way, and respectful way. And so anything that we can do to support our veterans, whether especially when, or our entire military community, but, specifically for veterans, they need to be able to, as they come out of the military, have just an easier transition. I know one of the things, my fiance, we were talking about, um, as he was a young person getting into the military, it would have been great to have someone to sit down with him and to say, this is what you can expect when you retire, or this is how you can, you can come in, these are your options, but when you transition out, this is how you can do this, instead of at the last minute, what am I going to do? Or as you're thinking about it after you've served some time, it just shouldn't be so last minute or feel where you feel this disconnect, because, being in the military was your entire life,
Yeah.
especially if you went in as a young person. It's a completely different system, a completely different culture and way of life. And so transitioning out, we really need to do a better job to support those who served our country and they, decide to come out and start their business. But this should be something that, you know, um, you know, something that it's truly talked about, like having a mentor from the beginning when you get in to talk about your life, as you go through the military and decide to come out.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it may be something that can be done on the local level, especially if the area wants to retain the skills. When people get out of the military after a full career, they're still relatively young and they're in their 40s, after spending 20 years in the military, and they've got a lot of juice left in them. That there are retirement programs now that educate people as they're getting out, but they're relatively recent that they've
yeah,
been doing it, and they're pretty effective, but they're not effective for everybody,
yeah,
and not everybody gets to take advantage of them. So a community like your district and the surrounding districts, it may be something worthwhile to look at if you want to keep that kind of talent in the area. And I think that certainly is something you want to keep. You got some of the brightest, most patriotic, and um, funniest people that I've ever met were military. But not to get too much into that. So thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
how's the well, we're all going through some economic issues right now. The
Yeah.
country is. We're having a hard time right now. How's unemployment in your district?
Um, Unemployment. Okay, so we're actually having a job fair on Saturday.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, we're really looking forward to getting people back to work.
Yeah.
Um, I really want to work on, especially for people of color specifically, I want to work on, making sure that um, not only do we have these opportunities for higher paying jobs, but that we can also, budget, and really go through financial literacy in a way we've never done it before. So I look forward to talking more around that. I want to, make sure that, jobs that, when people have jobs that they have access to great health care, health insurance, because the quality of life while you're here in the state should be good, right? And so that in high paying jobs. So one of the things that I love that with Youngkin is proposing is to take away the grocery tax. And I love that we need to work on lessening some of that tax burden because we are paying a lot of money out of our pockets. And so what can we do to keep more money in our pockets? So cost of living is so high. We need to work on our cost of living. Everyone knows, and me specifically, I work with I work with kids who've been trafficked and who are at high risk, but it's just not when they're kids, but I've mentored them for a couple of years and I see them transitioning into adulthood and have a really hard time with finding good paying jobs.
Yeah.
They don't have some of the skill set because of their trauma, what they have gone through. And so I want to see them with high paying jobs with a skill set because they went to maybe apprenticeship program or they ended up going back to school. But it's just we need everyone active in our economy, and whatever we can do to make that happen, we need to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to need that in spades, I think. As I think we're going to see inflation rise, and we right now across the state and across the country. And maybe it's not so much, where you're coming from, the unemployment probably is not all that high, except for the people who are unemployed, and it's very personal to them. So as much work as we can do to help get them back to work. There are companies that can't man the shelves and the registers and the cash registers because they can't find people to work. And then there's people who are out of work, and so making that come together, I think, is going to take some policy issues, and that's at the national and but also at the state level too. I think working with Glenn Youngkin's going to have some good ideas about that, and working with him is probably something that would be a good thing.
And what we're doing for our job fair, we are going to have someone who can help with resume writing there on the spot. And we're actually setting we're doing we're doing the job fair a little different. So we're going to set it up so that people are coming on appointment. So they have to call a number. We're setting an appointment with them. It's all going to be on the same day so they can, have the time that they need with, the resume writing person is going to be there. And then, so just like kind of holding their hand just a little bit, because we are coming out of a pandemic and a lot of people were home or a lot of people are afraid to come out. So we just feel like if we kind of take our time with it and help people kind of hold their hand a little bit, they're going to be fine because, the jobs, we made sure they're starting at $18 an hour to $40 an hour. So, that's nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So are there, you've got a bunch of companies signed up to
we have 100.
You got 100
available.
companies, really?
We have 100 jobs. So
100 jobs. Okay. So with the company, I'm not sure the industry down there. What are the big companies down in Virginia Beach? That, I mean, it's so much of it is military and contracting to support the military to the other industries. I know that there's a lot of restaurants and hotels and stuff, but
and maritime. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So are there any companies that specifically that are supporting you in your efforts that you'd like to say, hey, thanks for doing that?
No, not yet, because we're
Okay,
still got,
all
because
right,
it's coming up. So we're going to do a big boost, but right now we're just, we're just letting people know through our local networks, and then we'll
okay,
do a big blast towards the end of the week.
okay. And when it comes to the economy too, small businesses, we just talked about them, restaurants and I guess hotels, although they're not small business, but with inns and beds and breakfasts and that sort of thing in the Virginia Beach area. I know there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Not sure if it's in your district specifically, but are there any things that you guys are doing for small businesses to attract small business? I mean, this whole right to work thing is to try to not force people to have to join unions. Not necessarily a small business
Absolutely.
issue, but still a business issue. So, any small business things that you guys that you have in mind to take care of small businesses in your district?
Yeah, I definitely want to highlight small businesses because as I've been talking to people within the district, we have a few shopping centers here. And definitely there are people with small businesses that have lost their business.
Oh yeah, with the pandemic, there's
Yeah.
I mean, I read some stat. It was probably 6 months ago, but at some point that up to 40% in certain areas of small businesses had to shutter, which
Yeah.
is obviously it's terrible.
And
Um,
I say it over and over again that what I love about America and why I think people love America is because you can just wake up in the morning and decide that you want to start your own business.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I appreciate every person who has done that, right, who's taken that risk to say, I want to start my own business, and I want to hire people and I want to give people opportunity to work, and then they may go and start their business, right? So because the pandemic affected small businesses the most, I would really like to see more support for small businesses, especially those who lost their business during the pandemic, to help give
yeah.
them
If we can get regulation out of the way, and make it easy for people, make it attractive for people to do that. That's really the bread and butter of America, is
Yep.
the small business person. Um, But okay, well, good. Thanks for that. We talked a little bit about right to work. I'm not sure where you stand on that, on the whole
Yeah.
right to work concept.
Yeah, I definitely think people should choose
Yeah,
whether if they want to be if they want to become a part of a union or not.
right,
Period.
right. Yeah, yeah, right. So you don't want to be strong armed into that. How about voter integrity? Do you see? There's a lot of debate about voter ID versus
Yeah.
voter integrity. Is it an affront to require voters to have an identification? Is
Yeah.
that too hard?
So and I've had this conversation a couple of times. So I feel like sometimes we lump things together where, let's pull this apart. So is there an issue with folks getting a government issued ID? Because if that's an issue, that's a separate issue,
Mhm.
right? Then that means how do we how do we make that happen? Like, how do we make sure that there are DMVs, or there's, a location where people can have, easy access to getting their government issued ID? To me, that's totally that's the separate issue. Okay. Do I think that you have to have a, photo ID to prove that you are who you are when you vote? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I definitely believe that. And I believe that we need to help people get their photo ID.
Yeah, that's a great way to
I
put it.
would rather see it that way.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, voting is so critical to the nation. Uh, um, any aberration in the voting process should be taken care of. So that we can, I think anyway, but then again, I'm interviewing you, you're not interviewing me what I think, but I totally agree with you that that if there's an issue with getting an ID, then let's solve that issue. But the requirements should still be there. We need to be able to trust the vote. If we don't have the vote, we don't have
Absolutely.
anything, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
Just like, we do, and I agree, um, that, if, then someone can say, well, I don't need my photo ID to drive or to,
right,
do something else. And I don't want to go down that path.
right. Now, that's
Right.
a good way to look at it too. That's a different angle. It's a good way to look
Yeah.
at it. Okay. So what did you think about Terry McAuliffe's response in the debate with Glenn Youngkin about education and how parents should not be involved?
Oh my God. That
So
was
would you
hard
want
to
to be,
hear.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was hard to hear from, a leader.
yeah,
That was a really, that was hard to hear. And, I, just even having my own kids when they were little, and I was living in Jersey because that's where I was born and raised. And they went to a charter school, which I truly loved. I enjoyed them going to a charter school. Um, and then, I also tried homeschooling, which was amazing. And then they also went to public school. And I got to choose that for my kids because I wanted them to have the best, and I wanted them to have, because I'm thinking of their future. Right. So I didn't want them to, be a part of an education system or school system that wasn't going to support that. And and they're my kids. So if they're not doing well in school, who does the teacher call? Me. Right.
right,
So
right,
it's up to me to take full accountability for what happens, to me and my family, because this is my life that I'm living in, and I know my kids. So um I think what that does, it it can, sometimes parents can be detached from their kids, and I get to see that because of the communities that I work with. When I say communities, and I shouldn't just say communities, honestly, I should just say the situations that I work with, where, kids aren't having the parents really paying attention to their lives. So a trafficker will, right? Traffickers don't
yeah,
discriminate. They know what your kids want, which is what your kids think they need. But if you as a parent are attached to your kids, you are, you know, um, you know what their needs are, you know what their wants are, and you're doing your best to rear them and to guide them. Believe it or not, kids really want to be loved and cared and nurtured by their parents, even though they say otherwise, especially when they get to be teenagers. So to hear leadership, kind of encourage that detachment, um it is that's not the direction we should be going, in my opinion.
yeah. I mean, it's caused all kinds of issues. It goes hand in hand with the forcing of critical race theory into the schools. Just changing the DNA of the education that the kids are getting. At least that's what it seems like. That's what I read, and I wondered if you have any thoughts on that as well.
So for me, especially as a person of color, you know, I get it. I understand the need for talks around perspectives and experiences based off of, me being a person of color or someone being a person of color, right? But it shouldn't, these conversations shouldn't divide us as people because of the color of our skin. These conversations should bring, it's an opportunity to bring us together and closer so we can work together. And so a friend of mine, who is a leader as well in our community, she said she would like to call it DRT, divisive, you know, because that's what we don't want. We don't want the
Yeah,
conversation to drive us apart. We want the conversation to bring us together. And that's what CRT is doing. It's driving us apart. And so I would love to change the language to how we're addressing it, um, and move forward in our coming together.
Okay, well, that's thoughtful. Thank you for that. I think, are there, I've got to ask you, I think, a VMI question. You know, it's, we got to sort of end the interview with a, you know, do you think VMI is a terrible place? Do you know how much you know about VMI? I don't have to get into that necessarily, but I don't know that most people who have not been there or have been really exposed to it know the goodness that it has provided across the board for all students, regardless, all cadets, regardless of where they came from, what they look like, what they believe in. And there's statistics that, and I'll send you this. I might have already sent it to you before, but the national rankings and the statistics of the increasing numbers of the variety of students that come to VMI, and then how successful they are. So I think it's 98% of the student body of the graduating class of every class has a job by the time that they're, and a good job and a good paying job.
Yeah.
So about 55 to 60% of that is in the military. About 40% ish is non-military, or 45% maybe is non-military, and they go into the private sector doing all kinds of different things and are paid very well to do it. And then with the alumni groups check up on them over the years, and then they look at how well they're doing over time, so we can build track record and understanding how our school has been doing. They've been doing this for years, of course. And the records show that VMI is one of the top schools in the nation for success of their student body. And it doesn't matter the color of their skin or whether they're a man or a woman or whatever. It seems to be consistent across the board. So VMI has taken some face shots for things that just are not true. And so the general, I guess the general question would be, were you aware of that? Have you been seeing any of that stuff in the news, the Washington Post, or there's a national magazine as well, and the New York Times has had some stuff in it as well. But are you aware that VMI has been under fire, and do you have any comments about it?
I wasn't aware, but when I heard of you, of course, running for office and being made aware of it, I definitely commend you on, in a time where there's cancel culture, that you decided to use your platform and use your voice and create a space for yourself to speak. And that's important. We can't lose that, because that's who we are. And so I appreciate you doing that. That's very just commendable. And it speaks to, in my opinion, what you stand for. Right.
Well, I appreciate that. We've asked all the people that we've endorsed, all the candidates that we've endorsed. We've asked them, do you support the VMI mission? Would you support continued funding allocation for VMI? I mean, as long as within reason, of course, and as long as within the budget of the state. But there have been calls by Democrats, to be frank with you, to defund VMI and or to put them on notice, and from the governor, who happens to be a VMI graduate as well. So these are things that when we endorse a candidate, we ask them if they will support, and be fair to VMI, which is why we're in, why we have a group of people that raise money and support candidates who support VMI. And we've identified you as one of those people that we think would support VMI, even if it's not something that you are that familiar with, but just you're fair-minded and objective. So does that make sense to you? I mean,
It does, and absolutely. I read your mission and I totally agree with it. I'm actually inspired by it because it's easy to like buckle into it can be. I can imagine, how some organizations or may decide to not speak up and to not just step up to the plate. And so I see what you all are doing and totally respect it. So
well, we would love to get you and your fiance and your family up to or down to over to VMI on a weekend after you're elected to see what it's all about, see what we're trying to protect. It's kind of an odd place, but it's a wonderful place. It's beautiful, striking, and you might then, in talking to our superintendent and some of the people who are on the board there, you might get a better understanding of why it is we try to protect this place. It's steeped in history, and we're trying to maintain as much of that as we possibly can. So good. So, but before we close up, Tanya, is there anything that you want to say to the future constituents in the 21st?
Just that I look forward to working with you. I look forward to you holding me accountable, because that's just how it should be. And I just look forward to serving you. I do. I'm ready to get to work.
Okay. Well, I think the last thing we ask people to do before I tell you that I'm going to endorse you, that we're endorsing you, we'll come out and say that, is to ask you to say that VMI is good.
VMI is good.
Thank you for saying that.
And not because you're endorsing me.
No,
I wasn't paid to say it, guys.
No, I appreciate that, and we'll publish this, and we'll probably get this out in the next day or so and send it over to you and Nira to be able to chop up and tell us what you want to do with it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop the recording, but just stay on for a second.
Okay.